Alright, so I made a long-winded version of the 8.12 notes. I wanted to make a short version too, just like really quick digestible like info. So at least movement speed buffed, base damage up. This affects her mostly at levels like 8 to 13. This will help her keep up in farm going into mid game. Not a huge buff for her. Don't think this really changes her place in the meta. She'll probably still be on the weaker end. Don't think it really does too much. Ezreal, don't think he really deserved this or needed like an extra nerf on top of like what he already got. He's still one of the safest AD carries in the game, but there's other outliers that are more prevalent than he is, so I'm not sure if like he's the one that needed it, but he's one of the few AD carries that wasn't hurt by the changes because he doesn't have like a conventional build path. So Kindred, these are pretty big Kindred buffs: 15 base damage, 15% attack speed growth. But I think the problem with Kindred is more fundamental in the fact that she scales with crit, with crit being nerfed, and then she also is contested more often for Rift Scuttler now that it's more important. So it's a lot harder for her to get the advantage that she wants. Lee, this WF is pretty large. It gives him more ability to dash to allies. It gives him more ability to shield himself in the jungle. He'll be more healthy. This means he can use his second part of his W more often for lifesteal spell vamp. Base damage on his E also increases his clear speed slightly. These will probably bump Lee up to being a complete staple in solo queue like he has been in the past, and he might start to see like fringe competitive play. Poppy, they buffed her damage scaling and the cooldown on her Q. So I think these affect the AD scaling affects jungle Poppy more, who will probably have a little bit more AD early and can potentially build warrior and then go tank from there. Or if top lane Poppy is building cleaver, then these can affect her. Ultimately, it's going to be a buff regardless because of the cooldown. But I think the AD ratio affects like jungle a little bit more, or like a more aggressive Poppy build. Ultimately, I already think Poppy's pretty okay. I think that she's going to be pretty good after this, and we'll start to see her in both roles probably. Rumble. So 20 shield is actually more than 20 shield because of his heat mechanic, where he gets his abilities buffed when he's at a certain threshold. So 20 isn't actually 20, it's more, as well as this point when AP ratio is actually more, and then a small buff to his ultimate. His ultimate is always really potent. I'm always a little suspect when they put power into his ultimate compared to other things because his ultimate is already so impactful, but I like to see Rumble back. He's normally good he can normally survive tank metas because of the way he shreds tanks and his access to backline, so this makes him a lot safer and a lot harder to trade with early. That's a large amount of shield added. Sejuani, they buffed her single target jungle clearing, and they gave her AP ratio, so you can maybe go Runic Echoes if you're really ahead. So this gives her an alternative build path, and it buffs her sustained single target on camps, but lowers her like burst single target on camps. Talia is probably still going to be the best jungler in the game. They didn't nerf her E damage at all, but they did nerf her Q champion damage slightly. I think these will tone her down slightly, and particularly her poke and lane with Q, but I think she's still going to be the best jungler in the game and still like a really strong mid laner. Yorick is getting a compensation buff in exchange for the Sterix changes that are down here. Before we get to that, Janna's shield now decays over time. Karma's doesn't last as long. Luz doesn't last as long, and Oriana's doesn't last as long. The idea here is that you have to use your shields with a little bit more purpose. You can't just use your shields to deny them the possibility to fight you. You use your shields to stop damage when you're trading, like during the fight or like when something's going to happen. So you have to use it more actively. Then they nerfed all the passive heal and shield items because enchanters generally have a little bit too reliable of an output in solo queue. And then Athene's gets buffed. I think this will actually be like a really impotent item. They buffed the amount that it gets very substantially. This is actually a 40% buff in theory from 25 to 35 because 10% of 25 is 40%. So very large buff to Athene's, and I'd love to see more of it. I already think it's like a really good item, and this will make up for some of the healing shielding changes. So champions like Sona, Nami, Oriana, even potentially if she wants to play like more supporty role, Karma can all build this really happily. And then Sterix, well, Banner Command is removed from the game. we'll just toss that in there. And then Sterix doesn't give base damage anymore, it gives bonus damage, so now it's no longer a Trinity Force only item. It's now good for champions that are building like Cleaver, that might build Titanic Hydra, that don't necessarily only pair it with Trinity Force, because now it'll scale up your bonus AD ratios as well, rather than just scaling up your bases, which basically only helped the Trinity Force champions at that point. Celerity, nerfed movement speed, but buffed conversion by a lot. This is a buff to basically every single champion in the game that has any kind of like movement speed buff. So that's like most junglers, a lot of mid laners. That can be like Vladimir with like Shurelya's, or like Pool. That can be Echo. That can be Trundle Olaf, and any number of junglers really. That can be some supports in bot lane. That can be Rakan, like to give him more damage. That can be Pike. That could be any number of champions will get like a crazy amount of value out of like this new passive, because it will actually give like a meaningful amount of damage. It'll be a little less generalist with the movement speed change, but still really good. Hail Blade's probably still overall kind of bad because it locks itself out when you hit minions or monsters, but pretty good on certain champions. I think like things like Xin Zhao, Kindred, Quinn can make use out of it better than like some things can. I don't think it's going to be super competitive, especially for laning champions, but it could become like a staple for certain junglers that want to get attacks off to trigger like a certain thing. And that's basically it. Wanted to make a really quick rundown in case somebody doesn't want to leave something on for like 35 minutes in the background. So hope this is insightful and that some of you guys understand like the direction that like some of these champions are taking or what you can expect out of them. Thanks.